Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Phenomenon and Paranormal Podcast. I'm your one host, Christina.
I'm Allie.
I'm Anthony.
And our producer, Ray, is over there behind the cameras. And we're here to, again, talk about the weird, creepy, supernatural, paranormal side of life. And we've got a great episode for you today because we are finally going to be talking about all things Bigfoot.
Finally.
And big feet for that matter, because, you know, as you may know, there are several iterations of Bigfoot all over the world. So I think we're going to start off today doing a couple little fun things. We did this on our last episode where we did believe or not believe or don't believe.
Yeah.
So Anthony, you had a couple things you were just going to...
Yeah, I just thought a couple of random ones that probably don't get talked a lot about in the public eye as much. First, how about the British big cats of the UK?
I have not heard of the British big cats of the UK.
So the United Kingdom has long been home to rumors of free-roaming big cats prowling the moors and wild places across its southwest.
Nice.
Some have entered folklore, such as the Beast of Exmoor and the Beast of Bodmin, or Bodmin, I should say.
Bodmin.
And these became famous in the late 1970s when sightings and claims of slaughtered livestock drew cryptid hunters in the droves.
Nice.
So, believe or don't believe?
Well, I'm just learning of this.
I know, yeah.
But, I mean, if you're finding slaughtered livestock, something to it,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, all I could think of is American Werewolf in London whenever I hear about being attacked on the moors.
Yeah, right?
So, is it a big cat? Maybe.
I mean, it's interesting because there's also wild big dogs that have been reported in the UK as well.
Oh, wow.
Over the years. And so, are they seeing the same thing and they're just being misidentified across from one another?
Is it a shapeshifter?
Is it a shapeshifter?
Yeah.
I don't know, but a lot of different kind of creatures have been sighting along the moors.
Well,
the moors are an interesting place apparently in the UK.
I
So
want to go on the moors.
yeah.
Okay, Alyssa, what about you?
I'm on the fence just because I just learned about them too. I mean, it's possible. Anything's possible, but like you said, it could be totally like something different or a shapeshifter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the fence. I don't know if it's officially them.
Yeah. The other thing to consider too is you see reports in the US a lot of people who have money who keep wild animals without really reporting it to the government and stuff. And sure, that's not just in the US. So it makes you wonder, are there people in the UK who have brought lions or big wild cats to these moor areas and on their property, and then they get loose somehow.
Yeah, you never know.
You know?
I mean, and there's other possibilities too, but that would all play into a little bit of what we're talking about today. So I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, don't say it.
But what about you, Ray?
Well, I'm kind of agreeing with what you guys said about the shape-shifting aspect.
Yeah.
I don't know of many big cats in the UK.
Yeah.
I've been there once, didn't see any big cats.
Yeah.
Huh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
shape-shifting, I think, is a real possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that one. What else?
This next one is a doozy.
Okay.
Okay, and you may have heard of this, but it's not really talked about quite a lot. The Jersey Devil.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The Jersey Devil, very well known, but yet Mothman kind of overshadows him a lot.
Right.
So you don't really see him, but this is from New Jersey, and it's the weirdest body conglomeration of different animals that I've ever heard of on a cryptid. It's described as having a kangaroo-like body with a goat's head, leathery bat-like wings, horns, clawed hands on small arms, cloven hooves, and a forked tail.
It sounds like somebody's worst nightmare they had one day, and they just woke up and they're like, I'm writing all this down. And
It's like a scientist was in a lab and just put all these different animal parts together, and then they just got loose somewhere. But this thing's been sighted in the New Jersey Pineland forest area for more than 260 years.
wow, that's a lot. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was that
Neither
back
did I.
that far.
And they're very famous, these creatures, for their blood-curdling screams
Oh,
in the Pinelands.
I bet there's recordings out there of these.
Sure there are. I'm sure we can find some.
Right.
So, believe. Yeah, Ray, get on.
Like a Ray task for me.
I thought you were asking me to scream.
No, if you could imitate one.
Moving on.
Yeah, right? So, believe or don't believe?
I mean, I believe there has to be something to something that has that far back of a history.
Yeah.
What that thing is, I don't know. But to me, it just is kind of like the chupacabra that we talked about in our Latin America episode. It's that one hasn't been around near as long, but the number of sightings and just instances that make you really have to stand up and take notice.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something, you know, very similar, this weird looking creature that doesn't look like one thing or another. It looks like several things.
I mean, it's interesting too. It'd be around the time that Europeans first started coming to this country,
Right.
and establishing colonies and stuff on this land. That's a long time for these sightings to be going on,
Right.
And for it to persist into our modern age. I mean, I remember just a couple YouTubers were making a video on it a year ago.
Right.
So, what is this thing, and how has it gone unfounded this long?
My mind goes to so many different things when we're talking about this stuff. You know, cryptids all across the board is, you know, we talk about portals, we talk about interdimensional beings is what I'm thinking of. And it's like, you know, aliens in and of themselves, all these just bring to mind the fact that, you know, if there are portals or, you know, parallel dimensions, you know, what things could be getting through to another side.
Right.
It's taking
You know?
every ounce of energy I have not to go into a Stephen King tangent right now,
I'm
because
sure.
there's a lot of stuff that he writes about that kind of has a lot of to do with that
Of course,
stuff.
yeah.
But let's just say I do believe there are spaces out there
Yeah.
between worlds,
Liminal spaces.
you know, and what kind of lives in those places, who knows?
Right. I just don't think that there could be that many sightings of things that somehow we can't seem to capture and just have this tangible piece of evidence that says, here, look, this is a dead Bigfoot, or this is a dead this or that or the other thing. You know, they're going somewhere and coming from somewhere. And that's how I feel. Okay, sue me.
Lissa?
It's really hard when you guys go on a tangent, because then it's like, what else do I say? But I'll say this, that stop.
Okay.
I'll say that I think there's something out there that you could call a Jersey Devil that, you know, you've either had sightings of or, you know, heard. But is it exactly like it's described? I mean, I don't know. I feel like it almost like it's a telephone thing where, like, it may have started out looking at, like, this one exact thing.
Yeah.
And people just embellished or added on to it.
Yeah.
So there might be some descriptors that match, but do I think all of them? Probably not.
But you could even go deep right there with what you're saying. And, you know, you look back at the drawings in the Egyptians' time, or even, you know, beyond that. You know, back even further.
Ancient Sumeria.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the drawings they had of their deities and what have you, and you've got one with the head of a goat, and one with this, and one, well, Pan's another one. And, you know, those all come from somewhere, right?
Right.
So is it just multiple people's interpretations of things? Is it something that was actually cited?
You can go
that
deep
is-
conspiracy about that, because there are a lot of alien enthusiasts who
Of
believe
course.
that those are just experimentations that the aliens did,
Right.
kind of crossbreeding humans with animals and stuff, and then that's what became the ancient people's deities.
Right.
Is there any truth to it? I don't know, but it's persistent to every culture, I think.
So it's like the
Probably.
New Jersey Devil, for instance, it's our modern day, you know, thing like that.
Anubis.
That we have that later on we're going to be drawing on some wall
Right.
with graffiti, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Time that people are coming back and see hundreds of years later and going, what the hell kind of stuff did they have around here?
Or look at the TNT domes in West Virginia and all the graffiti that's there for Mothman now,
Yeah.
and Interpol
Absolutely.
and stuff. So I mean, it's gonna persist. It's gonna be there.
Absolutely.
For the record, yeah, I do believe there's something there. I don't know, like you said, if it's exactly what they describe or if it's just kind of taking a life of its own. But something was seen somewhere
Right.
that kind of
Anytime.
jump-started this whole thing. So I believe it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'd like to say I believe it. You guys get me on this portal business, and I could believe anything. But yeah, no, I've heard of the Jersey Devil before, and it's a crazy creature.
Yeah, it really is. But doesn't it, like, when we start talking about this stuff, I don't know, can't speak for everybody, but for me, it makes me really just want to go out and hunt.
I want to find a portal.
I say hunt.
Right?
I don't mean hunt.
It's like ghost hunting. We're not actually hunting
Yeah,
the
I don't like
ghost.
that
Yeah.
word per se. I just want to go out and find.
Yeah.
Analyze, yeah.
Yeah, investigate.
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
photograph it.
Especially with what we're talking about today, because there's so many people who believe what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
These creatures are actually far more intelligent than people realize.
Yeah,
Actually have their own society and stuff. So if that's true, wouldn't it be cool to like actually communicate and speak to these beings and
I
like see
agree.
what they have to say?
Yeah.
You know?
I couldn't agree more.
So
Well, I think this episode is gonna really be fun for Ray when he's finding and listening to and looking at footage, because there's a lot of it out there, so much of it. And Anthony, is there another one you had, or are we gonna get into the original OG?
it's OG time.
It's OG time.
So, yeah, obviously like we said, we're talking about Bigfoot today and all the types of different big feet that are out there. But for Americans, I think there is one specific Bigfoot that kind of jump-started it all. And that is from the Patterson-Gimlin film. I have my notes here. So it's been decades, but this creature was sighted in Northern California by Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson. Roger Patterson's no longer with us, but Bob Gimlin still lives in Washington today and still is searching for more evidence of Bigfoot.
Right.
This was shot at Bluff Creek in Northern California. And although the video itself is like a minute long, there is one particular frame, 352 is the frame number, where the infamous shot of this Bigfoot walking across the way is seen. Now, the big interesting thing about this film is that since its inception, it's come to be known that this Bigfoot is actually a female Bigfoot.
Right. Right.
And its infamous name is Patty the Bigfoot.
Okay.
So the Patterson-Gimlin film is kind of what jump-started the entire conversation in American culture about Bigfoot, about Sasquatch, these mysterious ape-like beings who are seen from a distance, and yet we never ever find bones or skeletal remains or any sort of evidence that they live here.
Or do.
Or do they? So, it's been about half a century since this footage came out, but yet it's never officially been debunked. Of all the videos that have come out of Sasquatch and Bigfoot that people have gone and kind of debunked, or evidence has been found that people have been faking and putting on, Sasquatch costumes and stuff, this is the one film that no one has ever been able to debunk.
It begs the question. I'm sorry. Were you
No,
okay.
I was just looking at you.
No, it just, to me, it begs that question. Is it, because a lot of people have tried to debunk this footage.
Yeah.
Or many people. There's still skeptics out there that are racking their brains because they can't do it,
Right.
but they still don't believe it to be true footage of a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But is it that it can't be debunked because it's an actual Bigfoot?
Right.
Is it that it can't be debunked because of the technology we had back then, the quality of the footage? What is it that makes it so hard to debunk? I guess that's why there are still people who are very,
Well, the interesting is they've had all sorts of experts look at this film, and we've even seen people who have been able to clean up the footage with modern technology
right.
nowadays. And you've had everyone from anthropologists and professors to actual Hollywood special effects and makeup artists
Right.
who professionally design the prosthetics and stuff that people use to make modern day horror films or monster films.
Right.
And they'll all tell you, like, when you analyze this footage, it does not look like a costume or prosthetics that someone is making. Because this was actually filmed during an era where, like, Planet of the Apes was filmed not long, around that time.
Right.
And so a lot of people were like, well, no, this has got to be fake, right? Someone, like, made a costume. But the movement of the body and the actual impressions that you can see are being left on the creek when Patty is walking, it's not consistent with the actual prosthetics that would have been used in a film in that era.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who have tried to debunk this for years, and they just can't.
Well, and even recreation,
Yeah.
to try and see if, and by today's standards, even where all the prosthetics would be much better than they would have been back in the day.
And they would have been,
Can't recreate this.
when the prosthetics they would have had back then were so heavy, it would not have been possible for a person wearing that kind of prosthetic to move that fast across the very uneven terrain of the creek.
Yeah, it was a very fluid motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very fluid stride. There was no stopping her when she was walking.
Yeah.
And she seemed to acknowledge that they were filming her, and she just walked off.
Yeah, she turned and looked. That's the classic shot right there.
Yeah.
Trying to look.
So for her, this creature, Patty, to move that fast, it seems it seems almost less likely that this was someone in a costume, and more likely that this is some sort of creature.
Right.
Just in today's day and age, we should have been able to debunk this if it was faked.
You'd think so.
So that's the infamous start to the Sasquatch lore in America, the Patterson-Gimlin film.
It really kicked off a craze that just has not died down, but amped up year after year. And I think, one of the biggest reasons now, too, is, as we've talked about in other episodes, our online, presence out there in the world now, it's so readily available to have footage instantly posted.
Exactly.
That, a lot of people do, where it's unedited footage that they're just like even shooting lives or whatever it may be. And there's so much stuff being captured out there now.
Right.
That, we've seen a lot of it. And you're like, that's not just an ape, and, it's not a man. And it's, you can plainly see things walking through these woods or on people's properties or what have you. So it's only just bolstered it that much more. People are actively out there looking and recording stuff.
And the fact that even today, like, some of the most compelling things that I've seen are the structures that are being built.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't always hear about this when you talk about Bigfoot, but the professionals who are out there looking, they find these really elaborately built structures from trees that are bent at an odd shape that shouldn't be possible for humans to have bent this way.
Right.
But they're bent into a way that, and then tied with some sort of string or rawhide of some sort. And it's almost like an enclosure or a map of some sort, like a marker.
Right. That's what they think is like they're marking territory.
Yeah.
So that others know to stay away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the more compelling footage for me, or evidence that I've seen, is like, what is making these structures? Because if it's a people, that's a lot of work to be putting in, because there's not just one marker here and there. There's like a lot of markers in these areas.
Yep.
And again, the strength it would take to form these structures, it would take a lot of people and a big crew to put them together. So I have a hard time believing those people would have gone unnoticed.
No, right.
So
I agree. All right. So I guess it's over to me now, right?
Yeah.
So again, we've mentioned how there's a lot of different iterations of Bigfoot all over the world. Ones that you're probably very familiar with, whether it be, the term Sasquatch as opposed to Bigfoot, or one that Alyssa's going to talk about coming up, the Yeti. There's one called the
Spoiler alert.
There's the Yowie in Australia,
which is a cool name.
It's a very cool name. I like that one. There's a lot of different variations that are probably more well known.
Yeah.
But there's also ones, and I swear I hoped that we hear from some other people, some viewers, but I bet you every state in the country that you're in has a variation.
Right.
And I say that because we even had, I got to look up who commented this, but we had a commenter that brought to our attention one I had never heard of from Illinois called the Big Muddy Monster. And, again, if anyone in another state somewhere in the country or in another country has their version that, is local to them, please comment on this episode and let us know, because we love learning about new things, especially when it comes to cryptids. Also, real quick, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell on this episode. Thank you. Appreciate it. But there's another one, because the Big Muddy Monster in and of itself, I feel like I could do an episode on, because it's so interesting, and there's police reports. There's all sorts of stuff, and I really want to dig into that one at some point. But the one I wanted to talk about today is one that you may not have heard about, called the Yucca Man. Now, we have done an audio podcast in the past about the Yucca Man, and it took like 2 or 3 parts because there was a lot going on with it. But the Yucca Man is a version of Bigfoot that comes from the Mojave Desert. So this is kind of near and dear to us because, you know, we spent some time living out in the Mojave Desert.
Yes, we did.
A lot of weird stuff happens out in the Mojave.
Very strange place. Yeah.
Very, very strange. There's so many things that to me make this one very eerie.
Yeah.
There is also the tie to Mojave itself because Mojave Desert is very well known for its Native American history, its lore, the fact that I happen to know a shaman
Right.
from where we were at the Mojave Desert who says that he actually knows packs of big feet out in the Mojave that he communicates with, and that the Native Americans consider them to be like their spirit guides.
Right.
And actually, I'm gonna see if I can link his YouTube about the map that he has that shows where all these packs of big feet are and how they travel through the Mojave River Basin.
Wow.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So when I heard about the Yucca Man, it really kind of stuck with me. And I just want to read one of the first encounters that happened here. On a night in 1971, the Yucca Man was first spotted on 29 Palms Marine Base. The story changes slightly depending on the source, but it said that a Marine guard on duty was found the morning after his shift, unconscious, with his rifle bent in half. When asked what happened to him, the Marine stated that a huge hairy man had appeared out of the dark and came towards him. The Marine lifted his rifle and ordered the figure to stop, but it took the rifle from him and bent the weapon in half. He was then knocked unconscious. The creature was stated to have glowing red eyes and smelled horrible. According to this one source, both the FBI and CIA were brought in on the investigation, and it was not clear what they found out. Apparently, there were at least 2 other sightings of similar figures that night. One described that there was a 12-foot tall figure with a smaller figure beside it. Other reports called in that their dogs kept barking at something in the neighborhood. So that's one of the first encounters that were recorded of the Yucca Man. He's given this name, of course, because one of the most popular and only real vegetation in the desert is the yucca tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see what the yucca tree looks like, it's kind of a big looming
Yeah.
figure with like spiky
Yeah.
things all over it,
Mhm.
which sounds a lot like the Yucca Man.
Yeah.
Right.
Other reports. There was another instance that was pretty infamous, which was in Fontana, California,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
which was our home turf there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a racetrack that was north of one of the biggest stretches of Route 66, Foothill Boulevard.
Yeah.
It was Mickey Thompson's dragway.
Mm-hmm.
Any racing fans out there are probably very familiar with Mickey Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
The racetrack ran from 1955 to 1972 when it closed after a series of deaths. Spectators of the crashes said they saw someone they call the Speedway Monster, which was assumed to be a wild man resident of the nearby San Gabriel Mountains who frequently crossed the land at the edge of the dragway. Now, if anyone's familiar with the term wild man,
Mm-hmm.
out in the mountains, San Bernardino Mountains especially, and in some up north as well, people talk about, this could be a whole nother episode, the wild men or wild man type creatures, or maybe real men that
Okay.
sort of live out off the grid
Oh yeah.
in these groups of people that basically will behave like wild animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be responsible for missing people. Some people claim that the missing 411 phenomenon could have something to do with that.
Right.
It's a theory,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what these people thought may be happening, that it was a wild man that came down. Later reports came when a couple from Desert Hot Springs reported that their car was stopped by a large, hairy man who stepped out into the road. They described that it stepped out from behind a yucca bush and that his chest was the size of a refrigerator with its arms hanging below its knees, had long tan hair. After stopping the car, the figure then left and ran off into the desert. And in that same year, possible Yucca Man footprints were found, each about 1.5 feet long and 6 feet apart. So this, again, you know, there's more sightings of this, including in an underground tunnel in another Marine base. Edwards, right?
Yes.
Edwards Air Force Base. Sorry.
One of the most infamous ones that I have always loved the story of.
What really kills me about it, when we start talking about things like interdimensional beings, is how much of these sightings are associated with, you know, military bases.
Yes.
Especially when you start talking about the one at Edwards, where there's this whole underground system of tunnels. There's so much attached to Edwards Air Force Base that, you know, has to do with occult stuff, that has to do with these sightings.
Right.
There were, you know, people who saw it, just like the glowing eyes after seeing these big hulking creatures. But then the creatures seemed to disappear and all they could see was the glow of the eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about whether or not things zip in and out like that interdimensionally, I think you have to kind of look at cases like this.
Right.
Well, interesting thing to me too was where they were sighted, because weren't they sighted in the tunnels underneath the base?
Exactly.
Where some of the military's weaponry?
Yeah, very covert
kept.
stuff was going on.
Yeah, stuff that public's not really supposed to know about, and these creatures were kind of seen running through these tunnels,
Right.
Yeah.
and then disappearing before anyone could catch up to them.
Exactly.
So it's like, what were they doing underneath the tunnels?
And they were hearing the creatures behind them, but would turn and look and they couldn't see anything but the glowing eyes.
Yeah.
So
Makes you wonder, was the military doing something they shouldn't have been? Maybe were these creatures drawn to what they're kind of messing around with and they weren't supposed to, or did they come from whatever they were doing?
were they an experiment gone wrong? All the theories that you could go into, but then where the first one was also at a military base.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so
And the desert is a perfect place for the military testing. I mean, it's very well known. I mean, obviously the biggest one, Area 51.
exactly.
But I think there are a lot of other places besides Area 51 where stuff like that could happen. The desert's a perfect place to hide that kind of stuff from
absolutely.
the public eye. So,
Yeah.
it makes it's no wonder that these creatures would be sighted there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it at all. So that's my weird big feet. There's another one I'm going to talk about, but I'll let Ali go.
Well,
Or is it-
Anthony actually had one other thing he wanted to share before I.
Yeah, before I get to, I'm going to end the episode with mine, but there's one piece of evidence that I think is kind of crucial besides the Patterson Gimlin film that I think people should listen to because this is audio related. And these are the infamous Sierra sounds.
Oh, yes.
So in Sierra Nevada mountains in California, way back in 1971, Al Berry, who was at the time a skeptical reporter investigating the Bigfoot phenomenon with his buddy Ron Moorhead, who, if you guys are Bigfoot enthusiasts, Ron Moorhead is infamous
Right.
for being a researcher in the Bigfoot community.
Yeah.
They were setting up camp for the night somewhere between Lake Tahoe and Yosemite National Park. When they were up there one night, they actually heard some genuinely bizarre cries, is how they describe it. Moorhead, when he was discussing this later on, would reveal that they actually had audio equipment that they were able to record these sounds with. And for a good long time, all you hear are these creatures seemingly communicating with one another using these very guttural, inhuman sounds.
Right.
And we're going to send the link over. You can listen to the link either in our bio or Ray can put it up here right now. But if you listen to these cries, people have been kind of dissecting these sounds for years now, for decades, and audio experts all agree that these sounds are not human. These are not sounds that people could have been making to try to fake it. Yeah. These guys were just in the middle of nowhere. There's not supposed to be anyone around. The interesting thing is years later, and I'll do my research to back this up, but when the fires were raging in the last few years over in Northern California, this area was one of the areas that got hit. And one of the only areas to not be destroyed by the fire was the area that they were camped in.
That's right.
Almost
they
like
built like this whole
structure
there
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah, because they went back for years after this initial recording to keep trying to interact with these creatures.
Right.
And, it wasn't just the sounds that they were making, but you can actually hear that these creatures started trying to come into the camp while they were still in it. And so they're in their tents and they're hearing these creatures kind of trying to approach the outline of the camp. And they're messing with some of the stuff that they have set up around there.
Right.
They're throwing things at them. They're trying to communicate.
Probably trying to get them out of their territory.
Yeah. It's almost like there's something about that area that was precious to these creatures.
Like sacred.
Yeah. And that's why it was so interesting that this is one of the few areas in Northern California that wasn't burned by the fires that were raging up there.
Yeah.
What is it about this place? I don't know. But these sounds have become some of the biggest pieces of evidence that Bigfoot enthusiasts have.
Right, because they can't also, no one's been able to come out and say, oh, well, we've identified it as this animal or this animal.
Exactly.
And there's plenty of experts who have tried.
Yeah, and there's a lot of wildlife out there. So you think that people who study these wildlife areas, you know, especially experts like anthropologists and stuff like that, they should have been able to come forward and say, no, it's this creature that, you know, they were out there. This is their mating season or whatever.
Right.
But there's nothing like it out there.
Yeah.
And you know, it hasn't been heard from since in that area. So
It's really interesting.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reports of it in other areas in Northern California. But you know, this in the 1971 was the big year that this happened.
Seemed like there was a lot of stuff in the 70s.
Yeah.
Where these, you know, people talk all the time as well. You know, Bigfoot's real. You know, why hasn't anyone been able to capture one? Why hasn't this?
Right.
You know, for me, if it is like a portal situation or interdimensional, you know, if they have a level of intelligence, you know, they're going to not keep coming back to the same places, knowing that, okay, people are getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
You know, they're seeing us more all the time. We're going to come here. We're going to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, that was, and again, well, hopefully you guys can hear it from your end, but Sierra sounds is kind of some of the best pieces of evidence I've ever heard.
Yeah, oh,
so,
Yeah.
Alyssa?
Well, the one I want to talk about that I believe you spoiled was the Yeti. He's always been a favorite of mine. I don't know, there's something about him that just like, he's cool, you know? I mean, he's in the Himalayan mountains.
Right.
He likes the cold, you know? I mean, he's different than all the other big feet
Right.
to me.
Well, he's like that claymation abominable snowman dude, right?
Exactly. Or like in
Monsters, Inc.
Monsters Inc. Yeah.
Hey, Disney fans out there, you guys know the
Yeah.
abominable snowman came bustling out with some snow cones, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
who doesn't love the Yeti for that?
I love that
Exactly.
part.
Right?
Yeah, right? Great movie, by the way.
It's fun.
Yeah,
but you know,
it's a good time.
He's the fun Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's just my vibe from him.
The fun uncle of big feet.
Yeah.
But the thing about him that I want to talk about is just like the kind of lore around him and how long I guess people have been even talking about the Yeti, which is a lot longer than people probably even realize.
Okay.
So, like the others, he's a bipedal creature that's very muscular. He walks on his two legs, for those who don't know what bipedal means. He has reddish brown or gray hair. Okay. He's approximately 6 feet tall. And he has been around and known about since 326 BC.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
See, Alexander the Great actually wanted someone to bring him a Yeti.
Sure.
Why not?
And
right?
demanded this upon conquering the Indus Valley region. But of course, they didn't end up bringing him a Yeti.
I would have
a
hated.
Yeti as a
I would have hated to be the guy that was tasked with that and failed. I would have stayed in. Maybe he became a Yeti.
Maybe.
Exactly.
You know, like
They said they were unable to fulfill his request on account of the fact that the high altitude inhabitant could not survive the lower temperature. That was their reasoning. I don't know how that played with Alexander the Great, but you know.
I have a feeling
I
these
think
guys
it's a
weren't
good
heard from again.
excuse.
But you know,
Yeah.
I might have
yeah.
So, I mean, they say folklores about him could like literally fill books because, I mean, much like Sasquatch, I mean, everyone knows of the Yeti.
Right.
Yeah.
There's various renditions. Some people say Sherpas drink and fight each other in order to somehow encourage Yetis to fight and destroy one another.
Oh.
Is one.
Okay.
There's another one that mentions something that's a little too graphic for our podcast, but it's
Okay.
that Yetis aren't so chill, basically.
Okay.
They also say a Yeti grows and becomes more and more powerful along with the rising sun.
Okay, that's
So there's different folklore regarding the Yeti that maybe not everyone knows,
Yeah.
but we like know about him in our American culture
Right.
and the versions we see in movies and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I think he's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
To be honest. And there's more I'd like to learn about him, but like literally it would take forever.
Oh yeah.
So
If I may, actually, I went to London for one summer as a college class, and I
Yeah.
got to see Charles Darwin's giant, like his first rendition of books that tried to put different animals in their family and genus, and he
Right.
wanted to just draw a line from the animals now to what their ancestors were.
Right.
And he
Right.
wasn't sure if the Yeti was one or the Phoenix. So there's a whole section I got
That's
to read about.
Really?
Yeah, the unicorn, Yeti, and Phoenix all belong in this little chapter that
See,
they
Wow.
don't know what it
That's
could be
pretty cool.
related to.
Yeah.
Phoenix is one of my favorite creatures. That's really cool.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty
yeah,
cool. I like
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Charles Darwin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's very fascinating.
Well, when it comes to the Yeti, I was going to say, Anthony and I have seen the episode with Josh Gates from Expedition Unknown.
Yeah. Shout out Josh Gates.
Yeah, shout out
Yeah.
Josh Gates, Travel Channel.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but where he actually went to the Himalayas,
Right.
on the hunt for
Yeah.
the Yeti.
Yeah.
And while he was there, they actually got some footprint casts.
He was actually
Yeah.
in the media out there
Yeah.
in the Himalayas. Like they did a huge news conference where he
Yeah.
found this giant Bigfoot print
Right.
or Yeti,
Yeti
print.
print.
Yeti.
But basically the same.
Yeah. So they never really were able to discern like this is for sure the Yeti's
Yeah.
footprint, but it's just it wasn't a creature native to that area.
Yeah.
Left this giant footprint.
And didn't they have DNA also?
They did, and they did
Yeah.
determine it was in the ape family,
Yeah.
but they couldn't determine like
What
a
it
known
was.
ape
Yeah.
Yeah.
that it was. So,
I have a question, by the way.
hmm.
The Yeti also smells really bad.
Yes.
Why do they all smell so bad? Do we know?
I don't know if we know why, but it's pretty universal.
Yeah, like everyone.
I almost
says
wonder if it's
about
a-
each one.
I wonder if it's a defense mechanism, to be honest with you,
Yeah,
because
like an
actually-
evolutionary.
yeah,
thing,
to repel predators or anyone who would kind of interfere in their territory, why not have a musk kind of scent to kind of drive people away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
if
possible.
you're
We have
smelling,
animals that we know of that do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're smelling kind of perfumey, I mean, you don't want people coming up to you, you know. So,
Oh, he smells good.
Yeah.
Let's go check him out.
so you get out of my territory. I don't smell that good, you know.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
I mean, you'd think their
love it.
strength would be enough, but I can see what you're saying because it'll
Yeah.
get people to not even approach.
there's always that one guy
Yeah.
who's not going to care how strong someone looks. I got this. I'm coming. But,
or at least one guy.
yeah, but if they smell, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
There you
So,
There's still one freak out there
yeah.
The
into
one
that
freak.
sort of thing.
The Yeti, too, I think it's cool because of the area that he's found in. It's just like the desert for the Yucca, man.
Yeah.
The Himalayan high altitude. No one's going up there.
Right.
I mean, except for like the adventurous hikers. But those are pretty
There's
easy
so many
to.
of them now.
I know, but they're pretty easy to evade because
Yeah.
it's a huge area.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, how many cave systems are up there that we don't know about?
Yep.
They're just very easy places to hide.
And he could camouflage pretty easily
Mhm.
if he has like the gray white hair.
Yeah.
True.
So,
Very true.
So
yeah.
before I finish up, is there something you wanted to add?
There was just one thing I wanted to point out. Well, one or two. I don't know. Just when we talk about, there in doing research for this episode, there are just as many articles that state, well, Bigfoot isn't real. So all you people who think he's real, I mean, you guys just need to let the dream go.
Right,
It doesn't exist
right.
type of articles. But there is proof of a creature like this existing
Mm-hmm.
in our world.
Yeah.
And this is what, a lot of people can use this to say, oh, well, maybe this is proof that
Yeah.
this creature exists and you just think it's extinct. But then the other side of the coin is the people who say, oh, well, the whole idea of Bigfoot was based off of this creature,
Yeah.
but they're extinct, they don't exist, and it's not what you guys think, right? So this creature is called Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
And so this is a creature that they actually have molars from,
Mhm.
Okay.
dentition, they have
Yeah.
jawbones from. And there was a paleoanthropologist a German one by the name of Ralph von Koenigswald,
Mm-hmm.
who walked into a pharmacy in Hong Kong
Yeah.
and found an unusually large primate molar for sale. Since then, researchers have collected hundreds of these Gigantopithecus teeth and several jaws in China,
Okay.
Vietnam, and India. So based on those fossils, it appears that it was closely related to what we now know as modern orangutans, and Sivapithecus, an ape that lived in Asia about 12 to 8 million years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
But with only dentition to go on, it's hard to piece together what this animal was like.
Right.
Based on comparisons with gorillas and other modern apes, they estimate that Gigantopithecus stood more than 10 feet tall and weighed maybe up to 1,200 pounds. Now, most gorillas only weigh 400 pounds. So you can imagine
Right.
the size of this thing. Given their size, they probably lived on the ground, walking much like orangutans do with their fists,
Okay.
but mainly on their back legs.
Okay.
Right.
But just kind of use that's what. But here's my thing. Okay. This is all speculation.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Without seeing these creatures or having more than dentition to go on,
Yeah.
how they functioned. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
What do I know? But, you can take that and you can say, obviously, they knew that a very large ape-like creature existed at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
And what, we know is that there are places in this world that not only uncharted places, but places that are too difficult for humans to go explore.
Mm-hmm.
There is an area in particular where the people firmly believe that there are still dinosaurs
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that exist. There are a particular one.
Mm-hmm.
What's it, the Mokliamembe?
Yeah.
Called. But they believe that these creatures are still living.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they're in these areas that are not disturbed by man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so if you look at that, because we have found in recent years species that we thought were extinct that aren't extinct.
That's what I was gonna say. I thought it not that long ago that's
Right.
come up more than once.
More than once, absolutely.
So it's like, why can't that
Or
be the case?
creatures we didn't know existed.
All of a sudden are just
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
and there are creatures at the super depths of the ocean
yeah.
that look like aliens.
Yeah.
That we didn't know existed. So if we have actual evidence of stuff like this, of a creature that, as far as we're concerned now, considered to be extinct,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
are they really? Has there been an evolution of that creature
Mm-hmm.
Right.
into something else that we now know as Bigfoot?
Yeah.
The interesting thing about what you're talking about is the areas that they were found in.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about this when we were doing
yeah.
research, and I don't remember the exact name of what it's called, but you might. But
Don't remember the name, but I'm sure we can find the clip.
yeah, and we'll
of it.
put this in the show notes if we can. But there is, especially in China, an area that there's an entire cavern that has an ecosystem of its own outside of the environment above ground. That is very interesting. It's like it's its own world there, and it goes miles into the earth.
It's fascinating to look at.
Yeah, it has its own rivers. It has its own plantation, vegetation, animals to live there. And this is just discovered. It's like a
literally,
hidden
Ray, if
kingdom.
you look at this thing, somebody found a hole somewhere when they're walking across the ground, and you look down into this hole, and there are literally trees growing up from way down below, and birds flying, and all this
Yeah.
vegetation, and like you said, rivers. It's a whole other dimension of a world.
That's
down-
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
It's trippy.
So,
Especially because
yeah.
if you consider, and even in America, the cave system, the Mammoth Cave system.
Oh Lord.
If you look at the Mammoth Cave system, it goes for miles, and not just in one state, but many states in one area. We know that there are areas in this world that are connected underground.
Yeah.
Who's to say that millions of years ago there weren't tunnels that connected to all over the planet? But because of planetary shifts, earthquakes, changes in the environment, mankind arriving, that some of these systems have since collapsed or disappeared and are unknown to humanity even at this point. there are even people who say that there are creatures from prehistoric times that live in the Mariana Trench to this day.
Right.
You know, obviously we have movies like The Meg that kind of talk about the Megalodon, but the Megalodon is just one of many creatures that are supposed to live in the Mariana Trench, and they're so deep that humans can't get to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll never know unless
Yeah.
technology evolves, of course, that what exactly is living down there.
Right.
And if changes to the environment keep happening, what's to say that those things don't come back up?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there have been, throughout our history, even our more modern history, instances where people, even gold miners, out like in, I don't know if it was Colorado, but during the big mining rush, that claim that they found in one of these caverns, like a whole other world down there.
Yeah.
And people living down there.
Yeah.
And then, just water flowing in areas that it shouldn't be flowing. And, after coming back out and trying to go find it again, couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But that is only one of many instances like
I think there's one like that in the Sierra Nevada mountains, ironically enough,
Right.
as well. There's like a big cave that people have found that it looks like there's an ancient city
Right.
inside of this cave. Like they can't tell which culture exactly it came from.
Right.
But there was a place for rituals to be performed. There was living quarters,
Right.
all sorts of things. It was an actual city underground. And it's just kind of just sitting there now, like unused.
We don't think about how much our world has changed because, like, right now in our time, most people don't reflect on history to that depth. We think about what's maybe happened in the past couple hundred years, and
Yeah.
and that's kind of as far as we go.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about stuff like, we live in an area where, the Civil War, the American Revolution stuff were fought.
Right.
And, when we think about, what happened with the Native Americans, we might think
Yeah.
about that level. But I just saw the other day that somewhere in the South, I don't know if it was Georgia or Tennessee, but they found like a whole, what almost looked like an ancient Egyptian city underneath this one area
Yeah.
that's not been explored.
Yeah.
And it's like, what was happening
Yeah.
thousands of millions of years ago
Yeah.
Yeah.
where we live?
Yeah.
Right.
We just don't know enough.
No.
So I don't know. That's my spiel on where Bigfoot could have come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll say to end this episode, one last creature that's become real popular in recent years, that's really popular in the South, actually, the Florida skunk ape. Now, you guys probably have heard of this. It's very popular. It's a skunk ape is known to be 6'6", about 450 pounds, hairy and very smelly, and known to roam the Florida Everglades. So the first report sighting here that I have is in the year 2000, 3 days before Christmas. There was a family in Florida who awoke to a loud noise on their back deck. There was so much banging and pounding that it sounded like some drunk was knocking over deck chairs. But all the noise came from something that couldn't be human, a low, deep grunting, and with it, a scent like something was rotting. So when they came out to the back, they saw something huge. It was a great, huge, lumbering beast covered in hair from head to toe. The family figured it was escaped orangutan, but when photos emerged of what they caught, paranormal experts started converging on the area because they had a different explanation altogether.
Damn those paranormal experts.
Yep. The monster on their deck, they believed, was none other than the Florida's own Bigfoot, the skunk ape.
Yep.
Since then, there is an entire research headquarters developed in Florida for dedicated solely to the Florida skunk ape.
Well, yeah.
So there's a one-man hunting down the skunk ape full-time known as Dave Shealy. He's the self-proclaimed Jane Goodall of skunk apes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So he runs Skunk Ape Headquarters, which is a research facility focused on proving that these creatures are real. He's poured his whole life into it, and he said he spotted one when he was just 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
So the Florida skunk ape, very similar to a lot of other Sasquatch that we've talked about, but it's actually gained a lot of traction over the last few years, especially in our modern era, especially, thanks to shows like Expedition Bigfoot and stuff like that. Florida skunk ape is like on the top tier
Right.
of Sasquatch sightings. And where they're sighting is another isolated area which is probably filled with a lot of animals that we still don't know exist because it's the Florida Everglades, the swamps.
It's a
Yeah.
hard one to navigate.
Yeah, it's very dangerous too because of all the known creatures that exist
Right.
there, especially, gators, alligators roaming the swamps there
Right.
They're everywhere.
everywhere. And it's just,
They're literally everywhere in Florida.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you
Birds.
got poisonous snakes that swim in the water and hang in the trees.
Right.
All sorts of insects.
No.
This is so
See,
Allie's
Allie's worst nightmare, yeah.
Life.
I definitely want to step foot in there.
Snakes.
But, there's just so many dangerous, even poisonous dart frogs, down there.
No.
So it's just so dangerous to explore that there aren't as many people willingly going out into these areas except for really dedicated people like Dave Shigley here,
Right.
who can actually look for these creatures. There's very few video footage of people who have caught like glimpses of the Florida skunk ape, but it's usually behind so many like reeds in the water and vegetation that you only get like small glimpses of its head as it's emerging.
Yeah.
But
So it's usually underwater?
no, it's in the like walking through the swamp.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
yeah.
so
But
like amphibious.
by the time that people get a glimpse of it,
Yeah.
these creatures have already traversed around all these heavily forested areas,
Yeah.
the vegetation and stuff, and humans can't walk straight through these reeds.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
so dense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you only are able to get a small glimpse and then they're gone.
Yeah.
But again,
As always.
are they just walking further off into the woods or are they just disappearing?
Right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Who knows?
And every time we talk about the interdimensional portion of the Bigfoot story,
Yeah.
all I think about is Predator.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that it kind of taps right into what people think about interdimensional beings. It's
Yeah.
the ability, like, are they really zipping in and out, or are they just camouflaged
Yeah.
to a degree that we can't identify with because we don't have the technology
Yeah.
to do so?
Right.
So that's what I think of. I mean, maybe that's not so far off. Just like years ago, we wouldn't have thought that we'd be where we are now with AI, right? It was just some sort of, fantasy
Yeah.
that we came up with, for television and movies. And
Yeah.
whatnot. But, we're seeing a lot of that stuff now.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing too, I mean, you may remember from Expedition Bigfoot, their show, but in last season, there was an episode in particular that was I really
Favorite
loved,
moment.
but they caught a glimpse of this shadow being running in front of their cameras, and it brought to mind the question of whether they're interdimensional or do these creatures have a natural camouflage
Right.
built into their biology. And they actually talked to some scientific experts, and there are military experts who have developed technology that can essentially make a person invisible.
Yeah. Cloaking.
Yeah.
It's cloaking, and because we haven't been able to catch these creatures, are they able to naturally camouflage themselves from us?
Right.
And maybe the only reason they caught a glimpse of it in their camera was because they're using IR lights
Right.
Yeah.
instead of just their human sight.
Yeah.
You know,
full
'cause-
spectrum.
Yeah,
Right.
because they were caught in the light of their cameras. They weren't
Right.
caught like just from your human eyesight. And so it makes
But
you
why we
wonder.
think this stuff would be so out of the realm of reality always boggles my mind, because in nature there are creatures that have been around for a long time that naturally camouflage themselves.
Yeah.
There are many that you
Yeah.
could name. So, like I say, why is it? And we talk about evolution,
Yeah.
and why is it so weird to think that there are creatures out there that could have evolved from something like
Adapted to their
yeah. And, to be able to go all this time without being, a dead one being found or
Yeah.
something like that, is like there may be a reason for that.
Right.
Well, and look at what we do with when we lose someone and stuff. We're not always burying someone anymore. Sometimes we, cremate them
Right.
or some other kind of form of burial. If they're more evolved than we give them credit for, and they're actually intelligent creatures, maybe they've learned how to adapt and to take care of their dead
Right.
in a way that we can't find them again.
Right.
yeah.
You can't say for sure one way or another.
No.
So,
To me, this just all goes back to the alien talk that we always have. It's, it's a matter of, is your mind open to the possibility of
Right.
things, or are you just, you have a very set way of looking at things? I know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a set way of looking at things that says, you know, well, this is, you know, you can't show it to me. I'm not going to believe you.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to stop there because you know where I could go with that. But
Yeah. When we go over our time allotment here.
yeah,
so-
oh yeah, look at the time.
Yeah, right?
You know? But yeah, again, if anyone out there has other big feet
Yeah.
that they're familiar with, like the big muddy monster.
If you have video footage, audio footage,
Oh man, we'd love
photo
that.
that you want us to look at, kind of dissect on an episode, please be sure to send it to us. All our social media links are down below in the description box, as well as our email that you can contact us at.
If you're an expert in the field, we'd love to talk to you.
If you've actually gone out there exploring and looking for Bigfoot or have studied Bigfoot in any way, we'd love to have a discussion with you. Maybe even on our Patreon.
Yeah.
That could be a really cool exclusive. So that's another thing. If you guys want to sign up for Patreon, not only would you get an episode like that where we're talking to some experts, but you can also get a discount on our merch shop.
Right.
So be sure to sign up for our Patreon and get your 15% discount on our shop.
There you go.
So
all right, guys.
I think that's it.
I think we're good on this one. We could go for hours and hours on Bigfoot, so we won't do that today. But thank you again for tuning in, and we're going to have much more coming your way. So, Anthony, you want to take us out?
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, hit that bell button, and we'll see you guys next time. Remember, don't fear the unknown.